the difference the difference that we get here in Northern California is that our home waters here in Northern California consistently produce bigger and more quality, and if not more quantity, of wild rainbow trout throughout the year. Granted, we are not throwing chubby Chernobyls and getting them on top.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as method of test, what's going on, everybody? Colin Coogan here with Confluence Outfitters, joined with my co-host, Mr. Luke Geraty. What's going on, Luke?
What's up? Not much. I see that you're on the Fall River. That's pretty cool. You're like flying a helicopter.
I am. I'm hovering in my hot air balloon right now.
Oh, hot air balloon.
Not snowing or cold. It's pretty warm up here. You know?
That's cool. Yeah. I'm on the Trinity in my new Mavic DJI drone that can hold 250 pounds. So
I see that.
It's silent. Yeah. So we got a fun episode today, huh?
Yeah.
Controversial.
A little controversial. Yep. You know, we're going to discuss kind of, Rockies fishing, kind of covering Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, a little bit of Colorado, places that me and you both have spent some extensive time fishing and exploring and working in, versus our home state that we both reside in and take people fishing and fish 365 out of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I get a lot of questions about my time that I spent out there, and you probably do too. What makes it so great? What makes our home water so great? What makes the Rockies great? The difference between the two, and that's kind of what we're going to go over.
Yeah, so Northern California trout fishing versus Rockies trout fishing. Yeah, fun. All right, well, let's start by talking about some of our favorite places in the Rockies. You guided. That's actually kind of where you cut your teeth guiding, right?
Montana. I spent my first 2 summers out there. Very fortunate to just be exposed to the Rockies and level up my game, get around a lot of good guides, spend time on my own, fishing around those parts, meeting people, exploring, kind of building the craft upon the method of how most people fish out there, which is dry fly fishing primarily. I was around a lot of guys that kind of the bobber was left at home, wasn't even a thing in the pack. So we're growing up here in Northern California as a fly fisherman. We spend a lot of time fishing bobbers and stuff. So I got to do a lot of cool things out there. Yeah.
So what rivers did you guide on in Montana?
I spent time kind of around the Yellowstone zone, and then spent time working for a fly shop and on the river out on the Bighorn.
Oh, cool.
So I kind of got to experience 2 very different fisheries, the Yellowstone, and then I did a lot of fishing in Yellowstone National Park on my days off and things like that. So, and then the next summer after that, I spent my time on the Bighorn, pretty much it was almost a full year out on the Bighorn. I did like 9 months or 10 months fishing the Bighorn.
The Bighorn is a year-round fishery, correct?
It is, yeah. It is a year-round fishery. So, I started that season sometime in March, and I think I left just before egg bite here in California. So I spent basically winter, spring, summer, and then into early fall out there fishing that one. So
cool. Awesome.
Yeah. And then on my free time, I've explored all over Montana.
There's like
Idaho.
a gazillion rivers that no one knows about, and alpine lakes and all that stuff out there. Yeah. And I've been to Montana quite a few times, but I lived in Colorado for like 4 or 5 years and fished a lot of the Rockies in that area. So let's jump into what makes the Rockies the Rocky. I think when a lot of people in the U.S. Think about fly fishing, they think of 2 places. They think of Alaska, and they think of the Rocky Mountains. Those are like, I don't know, river runs through it. Obviously put Montana on the fly fishing map when it came out during the apocalypse, when 9 million people started fly fishing. And I remember that time in the 90s. But what makes the Rockies, in your opinion, so majestic and amazing and sought after?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, it's a perception thing is the number one thing. The perception of an angler due over time, and maybe the people that developed certain techniques and tactics and things like that all kind of came from the Rockies, more or less. So it's a perception thing for me, at least, wanting to go out there and see what it was all about. And the next thing is that the fish in the Rockies tend to be a little more aggressive and more opportunistic eaters, at least from my experience. So we can do dry fly fishing. What at the heart of this sport, that's the top of the peak, right? Is matching the hatch and throwing dry flies. So to me, that is the reason why I loved it so much, was I got to do those things. But yeah, we'll kind of dive a little bit into that, comparing that conversation piece towards California, our fisheries, Northern California.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it was not for numbers, and it was not for size of fish. It's just purely because of the method of which you can catch fish there consistently.
It's hard to deny
that was it.
That it's hard to deny that it's not amazing being able to literally throw a chubby Chernobyl all the time. I do have a question.
Trout is pretty aggressive, and they'll come up and
On the Yellowstone, you did a lot of. Did you do a lot of dry dropper there as well?
Dry dropper and solo dry. I've never fished a bobber on the Yellowstone River.
Yeah, I as a I didn't guide in Montana, but last time I was in Montana, it was funny because I was with Mike Wright, a fellow Confluence guide, and we went to the fly shop in Dillon, Front Range Angler, and we were like, hey, we knew a couple guys there, and we're like, where can we go right now? It was like the middle of August. It was pretty hot. It was kind of the dog days. We're like, we want to just throw a chubby Chernobyl all day. And they're like, go to the Yellowstone. And we're like, all right, cool. And then after we went over there and threw chubbies the whole time for cutties and rainbows, when we got back, I was talking to a friend of mine who used to guide there, and he was saying that they do, like, he was kind of like, yeah, we don't ever use bobbers there, but we use chubby Chernobyls with like 8-foot drops. It was like this massive drop. And I was like, huh, okay. That's interesting. Did you ever do that? That's what I want to know. Did you ever do an 8-foot drop below your chubby Chernobyl? Okay. You're a real dry fly guy. Okay.
No, you just never needed to. Like when you weren't, the perception for me, at least when I was spending my summer fishing the Yellowstone and around the Yellowstone area, was I didn't have a desire to strap a bobber on. Like I was okay with whatever, I was okay with whatever the day gave me, going out and fishing a dry fly or a dry dropper rig. And to be honest, the people that I was hanging around that summer, that's what they did. We never talked about strike indicators. Yeah. Because it didn't matter. Our perception of the day was, we want to catch them on dry flies. Okay. Or dry dropper. If you absolutely want to catch a fish and the day was slow, you put a dropper on. And that was just kind of the crew that I hung around out there, and the guides and the fellow fishermen that I met hanging out. That's just how we did it when we'd go out and fish. So I'm sure I haven't been to the Yellowstone in 4 or 5 years now. I'm sure there's guides chasing bobbers down that river, and I just wasn't paying attention because I was in la land of dry fly fishing in my own mind. So
well, it's like,
I'm sure it's a thing. I have heard of people doing it, but that just wasn't the case.
Mike and I basically were like, why would you throw bobbers when you can just throw this a little tiny? It's kind of like, there's plenty of other places you can throw an indicator, which is fine. But so for you, one of the most appealing parts of the Rockies is perception. It's where a lot of dry fly fishing got, I guess, developed and curated. It's been a part of the culture there. What about what would you say about like some other reasons then? What are some other reasons for you that are attractive about it?
Yeah, I kind of I spent my second summer on the Bighorn, and I feel like each river kind of has its own little microculture as far as how you go about your business, whether you're working on the river or you're fun fishing on the river. They all have kind of their own little microcultures, which you'll find as you go travel Montana and the Rockies. And what I really liked, which was an eye opener for me going to the Bighorn, was that not all guides fished in their boats. was that, the boat, some guides side drifted out of the boat here and there, but the boat was purely a tool for transportation in a lot of cases for people that some of the half your day maybe was spent out walking, wading the banks. So I thought that was really cool as far as just tactics and techniques and really being amongst the water. But yeah, as far as hatches go, some of the coolest hatches I've ever seen have come in the Rockies, whether it be in Yellowstone National Park, the Bighorn, the Yellowstone, some river X's that are tributaries to some of those big systems around, the West Yellowstone area. Like I've seen some of the most spectacular hatches, just the visual, part of it as a fly angler, that I've probably ever seen. Some of the coolest, like you hear in the storybooks and you see on, fishing videos on YouTube and online as you're growing up, of just the blanket quote unquote hatches, where you literally can't see 20 feet in front of you because it's just all caddis. I've been able to experience those things visually, which is cool.
I mean, I think that's the big, one of the big differences between our two locations. I mean, the bug hatches out there. I mean, like I remember the last time I was on the Big Hole, the tricos were so thick you could hardly breathe. It was just blanketed the water. Caddis hatches, salmon fly hatches can be the same thing there too. So so let's talk about our favorite places in Montana, Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming. There's obviously other states too, but you and I have both fished in these places. So top 3 rivers in Montana, go. Come on, spot burn us your favorite.
Oh gosh.
You're going to get hate mail.
Number 1, a tributary of the Yellowstone that I'm not going to say.
Nice. Okay.
It is
Googling
a tributary.
It now.
Yeah, it's a tributary of the Yellowstone. There's a few, and it's probably my favorite place in Montana. If I could have, teleport there to fish in the summertime every evening for an hour, I probably would.
Yeah.
It's just a special creek. I like small water, rock hopping, things like that. And the hatches are unreal for very aggressive cutthroat.
Okay, so that's number 1.
That's probably my all-time favorite in Montana. Yellowstone would probably be the second. And then those two are pretty hard to beat, just kind of the Yellowstone basin. I mean,
that's cool.
I've got a chance to fish the Flathead 2 summers ago, and I actually really liked it. I'd never been up to that part before. I would like to fish it again. I only got a day or so to fish up there, and there's some pretty cool water up in the Kalispell zone. But a lot of my Rockies stuff has been in Yellowstone National Park. So, fish, I'd call that Montana/Wyoming. We can just kind of lump it in there. But yeah, probably my second and third favorite would be the Lamar Valley zone of Yellowstone National Park, Soda Creek, Slough Creek, that kind of zone, more technical Spring Creek water. So,
cool. That's cool. It's nice. Good locations. I will start by being super controversial and saying that the one river that I absolutely hate over there is the Madison. I'm just going to put it out there. Just going to say
it's a lot of boats. It's a lot of boats, and it's a
classic. It's a classic location. I know that there's some of you who listen probably are like, we go there every year. I get it. But it's just, man, there's just too many boats. And it's like, the 50-mile riffle is a real thing, So fished 100%. I fished it a lot of times. It's cool. Big fish. Aggressive fish on streamers, dry flies. It's pretty cool. But I just have always felt like if I'm over in Montana, there's other places I like to go. So for me, I love the Beaverhead. Absolutely love the beaver. I really like some of those small creeks that I've, just basically driven to that you can walk and, just cast dry flies, dry dropper. Maybe sometimes those are pretty cool. But I really liked the Yellowstone as well. The Yellowstone, just the characteristics of it, it was hard to beat the Yellowstone. And going back to Mike Wright and I saying, why not just throw a chubby all day? That was pretty cool. So what about
it's a giant river, and it changes a lot from top to bottom. I've been fortunate to fish probably most of the river. to like that's trout fishable all the way down into Big Timber area. And the river is vast. It kind of changes as it moves out. And it's
The
a sweet
float we did.
ecosystem.
Yeah, the float we did was pretty incredible because it started out being kind of like, so we were below Livingston, and it was like kind of flat, and then it kind of went into this valley, and then it got real like it was just in that one. I think we did like a 12-mile float as a massive mega float, but it was pretty cool. So I lived in Colorado for like I said, 4 or 5 years, and I lived on the eastern side in a suburb of Denver. And so I fished a lot of that side, South Platte, all the kind of the main things. And then also drove up and fished the Gunnison, Roaring Fork, Colorado. And then I lived in Grand Junction for about a year. And for me, the parts about Colorado that I loved was the Eagle River. Absolutely amazing river. The Arkansas is a really cool river. It's just, 10 million 14-inch brownies, but like 10 million of them. It's hard to beat, with the 4 or 5 weight. And then the Grand Mesa, which I haven't heard a lot of fly fishing people talk about, honestly. The Grand Mesa is like the largest flat top mountain in the world. It's got 300 lakes on it. And man, some of those lakes we would hike back like 4 miles into. It was like just monstrous rainbow trout, monstrous cutthroat trout that like had not been fished very often. So those were some pretty cool places in Colorado. But I think that the thing for me about Montana and Colorado that is unique compared to NorCal is the sheer size of the mountains when you get to the Rockies. It is. Oh, yeah. It is like, I love our mountains here too, but they're like baby mountains. Those mountains are like, dude, it's just the majestic views alone are pretty hard to beat. It's like you've probably had a lot of clients tell you, seems like this comes out whenever it's a slow day, but it's like, well, the thing about trout is they live in beautiful places, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's like it's slow day, it's a beautiful place. But you talk about two things, weather and how beautiful it is. But it's hard to deny when you're sitting in the Rocky Mountains and you're just surrounded by these, ginormous mountains, just about how, that is pretty hard to beat. It's pretty gorgeous. What have you fished in Colorado, or have you, and what did you like?
Yeah, so I did a very, very short stint in northern Colorado. And I didn't get to fish a ton. I fished some off the beaten path, high glacier streams and lakes in northern Colorado for, I was there for maybe a month and a half. And then fished like the Cache de Poudre and North Fork of that, kind of that far north stuff in Colorado. Cool. And I thought it was cool. I liked it, but my heart was set on continuing my way to settle in Montana for the rest of my summer. So gave it a shot, got to experience some of that, but I haven't fished anything kind of Denver south. And, I wouldn't mind going back up there and checking some of that stuff out. I know at least where I was at in the few rivers and high lakes that I was able to fish, that it was a very same trend that I saw in Montana, where there's just very cool hatches and aggressive fish. And that I could just throw dry flies, which was kind of what I was on the hunt for,
Yeah. It seems like that's kind of one of the distinguishing differences between our fish, or I say a lot of our fisheries, not all of them, but a lot of them, don't have nearly the same type of, our fish are aggressive in different ways, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So it's interesting. I was just thinking, we both have a mutual friend who is, I think technically in the Rockies, is James, Mr. About Trout. Is he in the Rockies, the San Juan? Is that classified as the Rockies? Because I did fish there. It's north of it's like 30 minutes from Colorado. Yeah, it's like it's as close to Colorado as you can get. Yeah, I did a couple days with him last year in February, and I think the numbers of fish in the San Juan is something like 16,000 trout per mile or something stupid like that.
Disgusting.
Yeah, it was. So that was it. Was the coldest I've been in a very long time. I will say that. So I think it was. I think it classifies as Rocky Mountains because I was dying.
Yeah,
it was bitter. So, All right. Well, let's talk more about the Rockies, though. Like, what makes it great other than majestic views and I guess the historicity of it being, the place where it kind of developed, and then also aggressive fish. What are some other things that you like about the Rockies?
Oh, other than those things that we've already discussed, it's comfortable to be in. Basically in their summertime is some of the best popcorn, flip-flop wearing, wet wading conditions you could possibly get, where in our summers in Northern California, unless you're up in the mountains, which I try to tend to be, it's blistering hot. Hot
and I'm
day.
going to go on record, Colin. I'm going to say that even when I'm on the upper Sac in July, it's still blistering hot.
Yeah, it's still hot. So
I'm standing in the water.
Yeah, as far as comfortability goes, like I remember I went and spent 2 summers out there, and then I come my first summer back, even though it was only 2 seasons away, I was like, holy smokes, what do you mean I got to go row down the river in 115? You just take that for granted sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, it's like last year or no,
climate wise, it's a comfortable place to go and be for a week, 2 weeks, a month, however long your travels allow you to go.
Yeah. 2 years ago, I was in Montana. And again, it was the dog days. It was like all my guide buddies over there were like, "Oh man, it's the worst time to be here. It's just blistering hot. It's so bad.
80 degrees.
It was 80 degrees, and I was just like, it was literally like 25 degrees cooler than where we from here, So I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is like amazing. So, but yeah, so you really enjoy the climate and kind of the overall comfortability of the temperatures and whatnot.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I liked as a fly fisherman or a fisherman in general, the first time I drove through, let's just say, the Dillon to Bozeman area, the fact that I was literally head turning and going, oh, there's a fly shop. Oh, there's a fly shop. Oh, there's a fly shop. So the accessibility to information and different people's knowledge, it's still relatively a pretty niche thing here in Northern California as far as shops and information and community built around fishing.
Yeah.
Pretty much I felt, at least I was submersing myself into that culture when I was there. Mm-hmm. It just felt like it was so much more readily available. What if I walked into a shop here or across the street, wherever I was in what town, there's just tons of opinions and knowledge floating around. And I never had, even a kid rolling in with California plates, I never had a bad experience going into. I probably visited every notable fly shop in Montana and Idaho, and I've never had a problem with the friendliness and hospitality of like, hey, you're here to catch fish just like we're doing.
Cool.
Go try this or go fish here or and that part was really nice because we don't really have that here in Northern California. We have a handful of shops, but they keep dropping like flies, and really the community is kind of built around online or within your guide community of knowledge and resource or hiring guides. So it was just that part of Montana I thought was really special. It kind of made me a little jealous, to be honest, that there wasn't more of that here in California as far as for the angler-minded person. Yeah. I'm not even talking from a professional standpoint. I'm just talking as a person that's into fishing and getting knowledge and learning.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really so I haven't guided in Montana, but I've fished with a number of guides and different people who are friends of mine that guide over there. And my observation is that they all I'm sure that it's just like everywhere. I know there's some people that rub each other the wrong way, but for the most part, it seems like everybody kind of gets along, and they all, they work together a lot on those rivers because they all have the same they're permitted. So you see the same 20 guys, all summer long or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah. But the one, maybe this is something we can talk about a little bit about what should be expected about fishing in the Rockies. Which we'll do in a minute here because we still have to talk about Idaho and Wyoming a little bit. But I liked how, I think this is both a positive and a negative. But they have so much tour. I mean, there's just tourists, my buddies that guide over there, like, dude, it's a lot of turn and burn. You don't have a lot of repeat there. That does happen, obviously, but it's a lot of people who are, hey, we're at the park, hey, we're coming in to view Yellowstone National Park, and we'd love to get a half day out there on the river with you. And then we're going horseback riding or, whatever. So, because of that, it seems like they're just used to a lot of first timers, are there, it's almost like touristy. It just, not in a bad way. I don't mean that in a bad way per se, but it's
not a bad thing. Yeah. It's how those fishing guides and lodges and fly shops stay in business, right?
But
yes, it's a tourist. It's a tourist destination.
Yeah.
It's a tourist destination.
Yeah.
And from my experience, I have never experienced something bad by going there being a tourist.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. I mean, they just seem to be like, part of it's probably just good business sense of like, hey, this is what funds us, so don't treat people poorly, But it's also just good hospitality, because I do know from one of my buddies who runs an outfitter over there is that like they get rid of people really quick if you don't cut that. If you're not good with people, you probably might not last at some of those outfitters.
Yeah, most outfitters in Montana don't put up with BS from a guiding standpoint or a hospitality standpoint. Whether you're working behind the counter in their shop or if you're out on the river working for them, you gotta perform just like you would in any other job. So the hospitality side of things is really important there. So it shows. I mean, like I said, I've been in old time shops to new up and coming shops to modern shops out there, and I can't tell you a time that I felt uncomfortable walking in there being the kid from California asking some dumb questions,
Yeah. So what would you, so we talked about Montana, we talked about Colorado a little bit, Idaho, Wyoming. I talked about, obviously, wherever, New Mexico, the very bottom. What would you throw that in there? Yeah, I just throw that in there because of the homie. Shout out to About Trout. Check out his YouTube channel. But what would you say about Idaho, Wyoming? I have spent less time fishing in both of those locations.
Wyoming for me, I have only fished in Yellowstone National Park, which is technically in Wyoming-ish / Montana. It's kind of lumped in there. So I've extensively fished in Yellowstone National Park. I probably have, I don't know, I can't even count. I just spitball the number. I probably have over 100 days fishing in Yellowstone National Park. Roughly, and somewhere in there, give or take a few. And then as far as Idaho goes, I haven't done a ton. I did get the chance to spend a few days 2 summers ago fishing the Henry's Fork in Idaho, which was a kind of a buck. I'd driven by it 100 times driving into Montana, but never actually stopped to fish it. So me and my dad actually got to fish it 2 summers ago together. We did a little walk-in wading on our own in the ranch zone, which was pretty spectacular for me, being kind of a little Spring Creek junkie. I like technical trout fishing, so that was cool. We hired a local guide from one of the shops to float us down the river to see some water, and I thought it was awesome. When we fished with the guide, it was kind of middle summer, August, I think, and he was saying that we were kind of in between hatches, but again, I didn't. We're floating down kind of lower Henry's Fork in the drift boat, chucking chubby Chernobyls with a dropper, and we were getting fish on top and on bottom. So it was like, even though we were kind of in between a hatch window, the fish were, again, being Rockies fish, being opportunistic and looking up and smashing a dry fly on top. So again, my kind of thought process, the size of fish weren't huge, and we can go into that between our debate between California fish versus Rockies fish. Again, it just fell in line with why I go out there to fish. It's like I get to kind of dictate the way I fish, and I'm not forced to be kind of put into a box, meaning I got to go deep and heavy and long and under a bobber. So it just kind of fit exactly my own opinion. Whether it been that day that we got or in general, they were being pretty opportunistic, and we caught more than our fair share on top water and some on the droppers. So
cool.
But as far as size of fish,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about
let's just dive right into that.
Let's talk about what
kind of opinion when people start asking me about Rockies versus Northern California.
Yeah, I think we could talk about it from this, like what can be expected. So, like a couple things that I think people can expect in the Rockies, and these are super positive, is that you're going to more than likely be surrounded by some of the most beautiful scenery that is in North America.
Yep.
Number two, like you, I have not interacted with any fly shop, guide, fellow angler that has ever been rude. It seems like most people there are, like we are. It's like, man, we're just happy to be out. It's so beautiful here, chill out. So you can expect beautiful scenery. People tend to be really, really kind. The fly shops are all very helpful. And there's a lot of great fly shops, like you said. There's a lot of this is both an issue and a positive thing in some ways, but like accessibility is a challenge in some locations, which is good for the guide world, right? Because there's certain guides that have access to certain spots. So the good news from a client perspective is that you could fish water that's not going to have Madison level, 250 boats on it that day, or that's obviously an exaggeration. It's 235, but there's some accessibility challenges that can be, had in Montana though too, just with all the private land. But with fishing, so the positive expectation is that you could throw a dry fly literally all day. You could strip streamers all day long. And, most guides are not going to be like, well, we really shouldn't do it. Every river seems to be, for the most part, places where you can do that. Numbers of fish. I mean, like my last day on the big hole, I'm pretty sure I caught 50 fish at least. I mean, it was like, by our.
What was your average size fish?
Yes.
Like in all honesty,
let's talk about that.
Truth ruler out. What was your average size fish by inches?
13 to 14 inches, maybe.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So my experience so the bighorn and the beaverhead are a little bit different, I think, in my experience. And the reason why is because they're tailwaters. I think that there's a lot of shrimp. There's a lot of bug life. They just seem to be, because my beaverhead fish, average size fish is probably 18 to 20.
Yeah, the bighorn's the same.
Yeah, the bighorn, my time on the bighorn, I was like, dude, I know this does not look like the lower Sac, but it's fishing like the lower Sac. If
the bighorn would be one of my favorite rivers in Montana if it wasn't located in a really bad location.
Yeah, like
it's in the middle of nowhere.
Well, it's also on the
other side of the state, in the middle of nowhere. And it just, as far as the convenience factor of spending vast amount of time there where it's at, is kind of rough.
You might as well be in the Dakotas. Is basically, I might as well just go to Minnesota. That's where I was at the last time I was there. So,
but to your state. Generally speaking, when people ask me what the difference between Northern California and the Rockies is the method of catch. And this is my personal opinion based on me experiencing fishing in the Rockies and seeing stuff on social media and trusted photos coming my way from guides. The difference that we get here in Northern California is that our home waters here in Northern California consistently produce bigger and more quality, and if not more quantity, of wild rainbow trout throughout the year. Granted, we are not throwing chubby Chernobyls and getting them on top.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as method of catch goes, they are different. They're in two different polar opposite realms. They're two different playing fields. But as far as the lower Sac has just as many fish, if I don't know the actual fish counts, as let's say a Missouri River or a Bighorn or a Yellowstone or something of those nature, or even the Madison. But dude, time after time after time on the lower Sacramento River in Redding, California, dude, the average size fish is a throwback is 16 to 18 inches is not even picture worthy. I'm not discounting those. They're still beautiful wild fish, but
it's dude, shake it off. It's only 18 inches. And
we're not talking about stock trout here. We're talking about a healthy wild trout that is reproducing in the river. And we're catching 22, 24, 26s. Every year we're seeing photos of 26 to 28 inch fish out there. And it's where else in the United States can you go
Yeah.
and catch the quality and quantity on any given day, 365, that you can have in the lower Sac. And that's the argument that goes down.
Well, so
and we're just talking about one river, right? We're just comparing a whole bunch of rivers in the Rockies to one river here. Our home water.
I mean, I like the way I word it. I would word it like this. I'd say, because there's going to be some Rocky Mountain guides that I want to go on record as saying, if I live in the Rocky Mountains, I would guide all of the waters that are around me. I would love it. Yeah, I love the Rocky Mountains. So like,
I'm not, and this conversation isn't saying that their fish or their locations are lesser than our fish. We're just comparing the two. And I'm just clarifying
for you because I don't want you to get hate mail. I'm speaking on behalf of Colin as his lawyer, his representative right now. He does not hate the Rocky Mountains.
No, I love it. Honestly, I would do that. If I could guide 365 days out of the year like I do here in Northern California, I would not be in California. I'd be in Montana and fishing there.
Now,
because I like throwing dry flies.
I, however, would not. But let me finish what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think, it's not that there aren't places in Colorado and Wyoming, and I mean the Green River in Utah. There's all, there's certain rivers like clearly you could go out there, and I mean I see 30-inch browns, I see 30-inch rainbows. It happens, but I think what you're saying is that with both of our experience from Rocky Mountains and our small niche of fly fishing in Northern California, I do think that it's true to say that by and large we probably have more wild a larger amount of wild large fish. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, it's funny because all my friends that guide in Colorado, in Montana, or like my homie down in New Mexico, it's like that's the rumor. Everybody knows the lower Sac is not a quantity fishery, it's a quality fishery. Like you're gonna more than likely you could catch the largest trout, your personal best, on any given day that you go on the lower Sac.
Yeah, and let me just emphasize too, if there is a guide that is listening to this in the Rockies that goes, no way, this water in my head does that, give us a call. We'll come fish with you. Put us up.
True. We're doing an investigative reporting.
We'll leave it a secret, but we would love to come experience whatever you're thinking is better than what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
We're fishermen at heart, and we're open to everything.
So I guess going back to like what should be expected, and maybe this is what I was going to get at is I don't think that that's a shot fired though, really, as much as I'm joking around about that. It's actually every 2 years I've gone to Montana for a long time, or gone to Colorado. And part of it is because, you know what? I do want to go throw dry flies for a week, and I'm fine with catching 16-inch rainbows, on my 4 and 5 weight like that. That's awesome. And I'm like the bighorn that day where we caught 50 fish, a couple of them were in the 16 and 17-inch range. I was not unhappy about that at all. Like it wasn't, like, oh man, what a bummer of a day. No, it was awesome. Yeah. I was like, I literally every spot on that river was like, all right, fish there, fish, dry dropper, everything, it didn't matter what fly as long as we were in the game, in good water. But, what can be expected, I think that is something to be aware of when we're contrasting. Cause like for some people, you and I both know somebody you've guided somebody. We both know people who like, they would rather go use a dry fly and catch 5 12-inch fish than catch 15 20-inch fish under a bobber.
Absolutely.
Like that's who they are. And so for those people, gosh, why would you not go to the Rockies? You'd be crazy not to, right? Because you are not going to have as nearly the opportunity to do that in NorCal.
We can emphasize on that.
Yeah. That being said, now let's talk about NorCal, because I always feel like it's interesting because like with clients who are asking me my opinion on it, I just share this story, and this again is not to throw shade at all. Because it's fun. I don't care where I'm at. I literally went carp fishing in Denver, Colorado one time, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like this, I got to figure out how to do this more. But last time I went to Montana, it was really, really cool. It was really great. And again, I also know it was the dog days, so it was a little bit hotter than normal there. But every time I go to Montana, by the third or fourth day, I'm like, man, I just love our fisheries our home waters, I'm not saying one's better than the other per se. It's just like, man, I can drive 30 minutes from my house and I'm pretty sure that I can catch 12 to 20-inch fish, pretty consistently. I can drive an hour and go catch coastal steelhead. We can drive to the Fall River where your hot balloon is right now. And we can throw dry flies literally all day long. Strip streamers. We got the McLeod. I mean, it's just like we live in a playground in Northern California.
Yep.
Fair. Yeah. So we talked about some of our favorite places in the Rockies. Let's talk about some of our favorite places in Northern California.
Yeah, I'll lead it off. The longer time goes on, obviously, it's no secret from former podcasts or just if people know who I am that the McLeod River is my favorite place on this planet as far as a fishery and just of an environment.
Yeah.
Probably my second favorite, if not my close first, is Fall River, which is my background right here. Just kind of me being advocate for really truly fly fishing, throwing dry flies, matching the hatch, stalking, hunting, pursuing fish, wild trout. The Fall River is that. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places that you can target fish on a fly rod in California. So yeah, and it's very much like Montana, and it's really close to home. It's probably the closest thing I've found to Montana environment and scenery that you're going to get on a spring creek would be Fall River. So I spend most of my summers there now, and it's where I try to encourage people to go if they want to level up their game or if they just want to see something really neat or have an opportunity to catch fish on a dry fly. Because starting in May to let's say end of September, dry fly fishing is a real opportunity there. And the fish do eat. So, and then I'd say my third favorite would be your background would be the Trinity River because I love steelhead fishing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Fall River. I mean, not to belabor your point, but Fall River, I don't guide there yet. Colin won't let me go there. He's actually banned me from that river. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And if I didn't live so far away, I would want to be there. It's like the trout fisherman's heaven. It's got everything. You can do everything there. So it's hard to beat that. I think the Trinity is obviously amazing, and I love guiding there. For me, I really, really, really like the lower Sac and the upper Sac. I think that those two fisheries are, just perfect examples of the two types of fish that we can do there, right? Because the lower Sac, big tailwater, big fish, drift boats, you can get out and walk if you need to, primarily nymph game. Sometimes get some, I had a couple days this last season where literally threw dry flies for a few hours, and, and the evening times can be pretty productive too in the summer. In the upper Sac, which you guide as well, the upper Sac's hard to beat. I mean, it's just gorgeous, crystal clear, water, and fish are feisty.
Pocket.
Yeah.
If you're a pocket water junkie and like a traditional trout stream, the upper Sac is that.
Freestone vibes. You can tight line, you can dry dropper. I've trout spaded. You can kind of do everything there. I think that's like a really fun day too. Actually, I was going to say, which you and I have gone out and done some video projects out there before, where we like basically brought every rod. We got a tight line rod, we got a dry fly rod, we got a Euro rod, or a bobber rod, we got a stream. We can throw streamers. I mean, it's pretty cool. And I think that one of the coolest things was watching you catch a brown trout on a dry fly. That was pretty sweet. I mean, that was the nicest 4-inch brown trout I've ever seen in my entire life. I just want to go on record as saying, so it was actually kind of cool though. So those are cool. But then I'm not going to mention any of these places. And I want to also say that today, we haven't mentioned any rivers that are secret. We're trying to be conscientious of not spot, blowing up spots that are, on the verge of being ruined. But there's also spots that we have in Northern California that you and I would call them secret spots, that, the place that we don't want people to know about, but we do guide them, and so if you're listening and you want to come out for something different, you want to rip streamers, you want to float a section of the river that maybe no one else does, you should definitely hit up Confluence Outfitters. Call Andrew. Andrew can tell you different places secretly as long as you sign an NDA. But yeah, I also Pitt River. You hate that place. I hate that place. We also simultaneously love it because it's probably one of the coolest places out there.
Yeah, the Pitt system is probably, as far as a walking away destination, is not for the light of the heart. It takes a very physically fit person to functionally fish the river, but as far as per fish per square mile is just pretty unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's stupid.
And if you want to fish it, give us a call, and Luke will gladly take you out.
No, actually, maybe, I don't know. It is pretty ridiculous. I mean, I'm going to just say, about the few times I fished the Pitt River, it's the access is very, very challenging. I mean, you have to be able to hike. You have to basically be able to parachute down a cliff, more or less. But those fish fight so hard. A 16-inch rainbow there might as well be a 30-inch rainbow, and they are killers. So we've talked a lot about. What would you add anything else to, let's talk about what we can expect in Northern California. So we talked about the size of fish. I mean, just for, so Trinity River steelheading, I mean, I think it's safe to say your expectations can be like your typical steelhead fishery, where if you touch one fish, you had a great day. Other days you hook 10 and you don't know what the difference was between those 2 days. Is that. Yeah.
It's pretty accurate.
Yeah. It's like, literally one day, we hooked 15 adults. It was amazing. The next day, we didn't see a fish, hear a fish. Every guy I talked to didn't hook a fish. What is going on? McLeod, Upper Sac, Hat Creek, Pitt River, those are all places where I think you can, depending on the time of the year, you could catch anywhere from 8 to 25, 30 fish. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair estimate. Yeah, and then all of our walk and wade stuff in Northern California, though dry fly fishing isn't going to be the only thing that we're doing throughout the day, our fish, if you're willing to fish all tactics and methods of fishing, they're going to produce probably some of the best days that you're going to have during the summer.
Yeah. The walk and wade game is pretty amazing. So, the reason why I say, the numbers are such a problem, right, with fishing, because if you're a numbers person, then it can be ruined by certain expectations. But I feel like in the wintertime, on the Upper Sac, sometimes, 5 fish is like, wow, we had a great day. We worked really hard for these fish. There was a 3-hour window due to the temperatures or the bugs. But on the Lower Sac, I think depending on, there's 55 miles for us to float. So the expectations generally are, you going to be in a drift boat if you come fishing with us, or if you go fishing on the Lower Sac, generally it's going to be from a drift boat. You're going to probably do a lot of indicator fishing, or at least you're going to be doing a lot of nymphing for sure. You might have a rod in your boat that has a dry fly rigged up to look for rising fish. You might also have a streamer rod to throw for stripers, depending on what part of the river you're on. And it's going to be, a lot of side drifting, more than likely. Would you add anything else to Lower Sac? Big fish?
No, just a lot of options to catch fish. And though 365, we don't have dry fly opportunities. If you are interested and you've fished the Lower Sac with a guide here before, and you want to do it a different way, that's where, communicating with your guides and with Confluence Outfitters, me, Luke, and a few other of us are not shy of going hunting for dry fly heads on certain times of the year. If that's something you want to try out on the river, we can go make a day out of that. With the right expectations. We're not saying that you're going to catch 100. But if you want to try to catch one, a different tactic, we got some other methods too that we're using out there that aren't necessarily your traditional way that you'll see that you've probably fished it in the past. So there's definitely opportunities on the Lower Sac throughout the year. to do it a little outside the box as long as the expectations are right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it, and really I would like to say for everybody in the summer who's like, oh, the lower Sac does not fish well in the summer. I think the half day game has been really, really fun for me. Come out, meet at 4, fish until 9, 4 or 5, we'll meet up and then we'll go out. And we pretty much every night that I do that with clients, we throw dry flies and we get fish on dry flies because the hatches in the evening before it gets dark, especially that last like 2-hour window can be insane. I mean, I honestly think it can be some of the best fly fishing that we have in Northern California for both productivity, size of fish. It's really hard to beat. So I think that kind of covers what to be expected, here. So let's do this. Your final thoughts. What makes the Rockies great? What makes Northern California great? Go.
What makes the Rockies great? That you can go have a fun time and leave your bobbers at home. With the expectations. Yeah. Northern California. What makes Northern California great is that we have legitimate shots of catching fish 365 days of the year. We can go fish somewhere awesome. Where in the Rockies you have 4 to 6 months max window throughout your season to catch fish. Not saying that winter fishing isn't a thing out there, but as far as optimal conditions in Northern California, year-round trout and steelhead fishing.
Yeah. Year-round trout and steelhead fishing. That's definitely a big sell. Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, this has been a fun conversation. I think we should maybe just talk a little bit about where we've been fishing. Give a quick river update for anybody who's listening, who's kind of curious about what's going on. So where have you been? What have you been doing? How's it been going?
I have been on one river primarily for the last lots of months, and that would be the Trinity River. I've been kind of I've been dabbling in a couple other locations as well over the last couple of weeks, professionally and personally. But I would probably say my eyes are still in steelhead mode, not quite transitioned into trout mode yet. I got probably another, let's say, month and a half, probably max, of taking people steelhead fishing on the Trinity River. And it's been, after the storms, it's been fishing great. We are kind of low and clear over the last couple of days. Fishing has been, I would say, tough, but just a handful of days ago, colored up, the fishing was incredible. So that's probably going to be kind of the trend. If I had to put my finger down on it for the next month, is if you can kind of look at the storm patterns and talk with your guides and line up your days as best as possible with around the weather, that's going to be your best shot at catching a sick winter fish. When you are tangling with a fish right now, they are awesome fish. And I don't know about other guys, but it seems like I've been on kind of a streak of catching really nice wild ones.
Yeah. Big wild fish.
I'm not saying we're catching tons of them, but when you do tangle with one, it's a legit fish.
Yeah.
So, and I anticipate that kind of being you can chime in a little bit, but I'm assuming that's what the case is going to be for the next month. We're getting rain right now. Over the next couple of days, the river's probably going to come up a little bit, color up a little bit. Fish are going to stir around. Fish are going to get caught, and then that next cell is going to come in like a week or something like that. I was looking at the weather forecast earlier today. So, I mean, I think through the rest of this month, it's going to be opportunity. Into February, it'll just kind of dictate based on our water level. If we're getting new rain, new fish kind of skirting through. But don't let that bother you. Just book your trip. Your guides are going to steer you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to help you, whether it's me, Luke, or anybody else on the Confluence roster. We want to have a successful day out there. More than likely, if not likely, we're not going to take you fishing if we don't think we have a chance. So book it, and we'll figure it out from there and be able to do our best. So
it's about.
How about you? How about you, Mr.
thing.
Luke? Yeah,
I've been mostly on the Trinity, but also doing a fair amount of days on the Sac too, as well. Kind of doing our winter, the winter lower Sac fishing.
Yeah.
I think you're 100% right. If you're on the Trinity at the right time, river's got color in it, got a little bit more flow, it can be really, really good. If it's low and clear, there's not a lot of rain, then we're just working harder. It's not that the fish aren't there. It just seems like it's more like you got to be on your A game. You might only get, a few shots rather than, when it's colored up, and you might get more shots. But I mean, as you know, steelhead, it's tough, dude. I forget about that. I forget about that until I actually went fishing maybe 2 weeks ago. I got to go fishing, and I hooked a donkey, dude. It was a real one, and it just took off, stripped all my line. I'm like, yeah. And then it just stopped and came right back to the boat as fast as it had took off. And I was like, oh, start stripping in, and then there's nothing there. I'm like, oh, it just happens so quickly. And because I think sometimes when we're guiding a lot, we forget, right? We forget oh, this is actually not easy. We're getting all oh, come on, why are you losing these fish? Or what, whatever, set the hook. So anyway, it was a good reminder of how I'm a guide, not an angler apparently. But yeah, so the Trinity's been I'd say mostly the season's been great again. A lot of big wild fish, like you're saying. We've kind of moved into that for sure winter, no longer fall. It seems like we're in the winter, bigger fish. The lower Sac's been fishing pretty good. It just depends on the weather. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of days where it's been rainy and pretty coldish, and it's so weird, man. There's no differences, but one day we will just pillage. It feels like, they're just crushing Baetis and even caddis still, the perpetual eternal caddis hatch. But yeah, and then the next day it'll be no different, same temperature, same weather. And it's a lot more tough, a lot tougher. We're getting them on other things, that are more I feel like, we're kind of throwing everything at them, but it's been fishing pretty decent. And the good news for anyone listening is that the Trinity, like Colin said, I mean, I fish it comfortably up until the first week of March. After that, I tend to say no more. Let's give the fish a break. They're starting to spawn. You start to have a lot of downstreamers at that point on. But February, March, and April are excellent for the lower Sac. I mean, the PMDs will start showing up. It starts warming up. It gets back to we're out of that trout fishing, because right now this time of the year it tends to be less numbers, more like some of the bigger fish I get every year are in the December, January time of the year. So, but you're going to be starting to look toward what's your next trout thing after the trend.
Say that again.
Fall. I mean, are you moving to what's your after you get done with Trinity, March? What are you doing after that? Because I know you're not coming to Sac. You don't. You hate the Sac. You won't come there with me. So.
Once my Trinity season wraps up, latter part of February, I'll be transitioning probably for just a short. It just totally depends on what the weather's doing, but I'll probably transition down into doing a lot more Sac days with you. I'll be cutting you off and low holing you.
He will,
doing that stuff. So I'll be on the lower Sac. March is probably one of my more favorite months to actually be down in Redding and fishing that. But that's when I start making the transition into trout.
Walk and wade.
Walk and wade. Historically, some of the cool fishing that I've seen on the upper Sac and has been in March, April, and then we start kind of making that transition into McLeod once we can get in with snow and stuff, and then into that Hat Creek, Fall River, all those things kind of as the months progress into the spring, all start firing off. So. Cool. For me, I kind of just start making that transition into March, lower Sac, and then start working my way up into the mountains as the weather is permitting us to and flows. So, and
then fall. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been a fun conversation. Hopefully this has been helpful for all of our listeners. If you are new to the Confluence Podcast, it would be awesome if you would help us out by liking. You can also subscribe and follow our social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook. We also have our YouTube channel. And leave a review. That actually helps us quite a bit. If you leave a review for the podcast in the Apple Podcast area, that will help us get more notoriety so that we can get some really cool guides in the Rocky Mountains to be like, oh, man, you don't know about my river. You guys should come out and fish. I'd like to fly you on my private jet, Colin and Luke, and then bring us out. And we will, Colin, is this fair? If we end up fishing somewhere in the Rockies and we get taught that we were wrong, we will do a podcast. we will rescind.
If someone can show me something better.
Yeah, and we won't even spot burn. We will just say
we won't spot burn, but I will publicly say I was wrong.
Yeah, I will as well.
Yeah,
I will as well. So, hey, thanks for listening, Colin. It's good talking to you, and we'll talk to everybody soon.